Welcome back to the Asheville View, and we're here with Asheville's own mayor, Mrs. Esther Manheimer. How are you?
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
We were so excited that you decided to come and spend this time with us because we've been talking a lot about diversity and equity and entrepreneurship and all the things that we know that are important to you. And we just wanted to have an opportunity to talk to you and hear from you about what's all going on with you.
All right.
Yes, so let's do it. Who wants to jump in?
I read that you were born in Denmark, right? And so did you learn, before we jump into like the deeper questions, did you learn, were you bilingual before you came here?
Yes, so my parents were living in Denmark, and I was born in rural northern Denmark in this little farming community, and my first language was Danish. And my mom and I have talked a lot about this because she says she spoke English to me, but I hung out more with the village girls who like to come and take me around in their wagon.
Nice.
So I learned Danish, and then my family moved from there to San Diego, and I didn't speak English. But then I learned in preschool.
Oh, wow. Do you still know it now, or is it all gone because you haven't been practicing?
It's gone, pretty much gone. My parents said they learned Danish the way an American would learn Danish in Denmark, but my version of Danish was a little bit more local, like a dialect, because where we lived, and they weren't able to keep up with me.
Right. So can you understand it if you hear it now, or
I
not
can't,
even?
No, I know.
What a shame.
Yeah.
Well, that's something to do, maybe.
Yeah,
just go back and.
I have been back to see where I was born because I was born in a funny place. I was born in a building that was once a pig barn.
Oh wow!
With a midwife in the middle of nowhere, like
wow.
literally
That's
next
really
to
cool.
a farm that had Viking burial mounds in it.
Wow.
That's a very
love
interesting place, I think, to be born.
So awesome. I want to know, where do you like to hang out for fun, or like what do you do for fun? How does the mayor have fun?
Well, what do you do for fun?
Clearly, you're not keeping up with social media.
I know, yeah. So I would know if I checked your feed, I'd be able to see where you're having fun. All right. Well, I do have 2 jobs and 3 kids and a husband. So fun. If I get, this sounds so lame, I guess, kind of in a way, but if I get to steal away, I try to go for walks with my mom.
Nice.
And
that is really nice.
And my dad lives here too, so we walk they're divorced, but my dad's remarried, and anyway, I walk with my dad on Sundays, and I grab a walk with my mom when I can. So and I also am pretty dedicated to exercise in general, so if I have time, I try to make time.
That's why you look so great.
Oh, yeah. True.
But my fun is cooking.
Oh,
nice.
We have that in common.
What do you like to cook?
I found out I was half Italian, and so I learned how to make homemade pasta and Alfredo sauce, but I love to cook everything, like from Asian food to Italian.
Yeah.
What do you like to cook?
Well, today I'm making a chicken curry.
Ooh.
Yeah.
But since my kids won't eat it, only my husband will eat it, I'm also going to grill some pork tenderloin for them.
Yeah. Is there a particular place in Asheville? I know it's such a foodie town and we have so many amazing places to eat. Is there any place in particular that you love to go to, your favorite?
Oh, that's very dangerous.
I know. Being the mayor and all.
Oh, gosh. I'm kind of a sucker for a kale salad. I know that sounds really Asheville.
No. But it's true. Some places have a really, really good.
Have a really good kale salad. Yeah.
You know what's interesting though? I feel like growing up, I never heard the word kale, and then all of a sudden, kale's
absolutely.
a thing. Like, when was kale invented?
Yeah. I know.
Well, it's funny because it's a superfood, but like actually the whole time we've been eating like romaine lettuce actually has more nutrient density than kale, but the food industry is as trendy as the fashion industry.
Yeah.
And so that's why there's always like, this is the new thing this year. It was sriracha, then it was harissa, now it's something else. So
you can't say superfood in front of...
Sorry.
You can't say superfood in front of Raph. That's like the only time he gets testy. Like, what is a superfood?
There's no such thing as a superfood.
So trust me, I know. My husband has grilled that into my head. Like, no, there's no such thing. So my question for you is like, how does someone from Denmark decide, you know what, like I'm going to be the mayor of Asheville and I'm going to make some serious changes here? What inspired you? What took place from being like a lawyer, because that's a really great job, to being the mayor, which is a really low paying job? Like what made you make that switch and what inspired you?
Are you trying to remind me of these decisions I've made? You know, I get asked this a lot, and I think it was an evolution for me. I mean, I became interested in politics in college, and I learned a lot about local government in college. I didn't really understand the difference between a city and the state and the federal government, and so it was kind of academic in the beginning. I actually was a nanny for a woman who was a county attorney, and that was kind of my introduction to. Yeah. When I moved out to Colorado when I was in undergrad, and I couldn't afford out-state tuition, so I got a job and worked for a year to get in-state residency, and I worked for these two moms who were both working moms, and I was their nanny for a year. So I kind of watched what they did. Anyway, I don't usually tell that whole story. But then I finished college, and I went to get a master's in public administration, what you would do if you want to be a city manager or a department director. And then I added a law school, because back then college was really cheap, so I just kept going to school. And then I went to work in the North Carolina legislature as an attorney in the legislature. And I would look at all these people who were elected to office, and I'd think, I can't do that. This must be a person that is this special person who's achieved so much. That, you know, I'm not one of those people. I'm not a person who could be like that. And then I watched them do their job, and I thought, I think I can do this job.
Maybe even better.
And
Since my first lesson was that legislators didn't actually write bills, which I thought they did. It's the staff lawyers that did that. So, we moved back to Asheville in 2002, and I just started getting involved in my community, and I served on the Board of Adjustment, which for me was really interesting. And it just took off from there. So
what's the best part about being a mayor? Like I did this one thing. Like, do you have a special parking spot in the city? Like something special? Give us something good, girl.
I got a parking ticket in my special spot the other day. And I just went ahead and paid it. My favorite part, and the part I didn't, you know, it's not like there's quite a job description for being a mayor, is all the work I get to do with kids. I meet with classes from all the different school systems. I either go to them or they come to City Hall. And I've developed these presentations for them so that, you know, they're age appropriate, K through 5 or middle school, they're the hardest. And and then high school, very hard too, because sometimes they like to go to sleep. But I try to teach them about what the city government does. And then I love to hear their questions and their comments and their ideas, their visions for our community. They're just, you know, kids they'll just keep it real for you all the time.
They will keep
I've definitely been offended by like a very little kid before. Like, oh God.
Tell you the truth.
I met you for the first time actually here at Block Off Biltmore. My son was doing a competition with the Awesome Foundation. He won, but you were here, and I was like, so the mayor just hangs out at 7:00 at night? Like, I'm into her. She's cool. I want to find out, like, what's up? She's like, I like your shirt. I'm like, she's the mayor. She's talking to me. So it was really eye-opening to see that type of community engagement, because I've always been a community builder, but I've lived in places where the mayor wasn't as accessible as you are. And so that's one of the things that I really admire about you.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm sure in big cities it is a lot harder for the mayor to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Another question I had was, people know that I'm all about my cocktails. I love my cocktails. Is there a special cocktail that the mayor likes? And what is it?
Well, we're going to be drinking like royalty.
I know.
You know, I have kind of this whole thing about alcohol in general, because I do enjoy a drink, but I try to be really careful. So because I think I'm kind of like extra sensitive, you know, I don't want to feel dehydrated.
And you work out, right?
And you work out, yeah. Well, and I'm also, you know, TMI, but I'm managing. I have rheumatoid arthritis, so I have a chronic disease. So I got to kind of manage that and medication for that and things like that.
Right.
I say all that to say that I like straight tequila.
Paloma, baby.
Myriam has a drink all based on that.
Yes,
So
on
you guys
tequila.
are connected.
That was like my.
It's actually really good for you. It's healthy.
Yeah, you know. Right.
There actually, I did hear there was like actually a tequila cleanse where you like fast and you like take a certain shot of tequila like every certain hour of the day.
Tequila cleanse. Whoa.
Well, right down the street at Limones, they have tequila flights.
Yeah, that's true. They do.
Oh,
They
okay.
do.
Check out a
Yep.
tequila flight. So there's this fabulous part of being the mayor, and then there's this like not so fabulous part where like people blame you for everything. So tell us, what issue do people blame you the most for that you absolutely have no control over, but you still get the brunt of?
So modern day politicians get to experience tweets and Facebook and emails. And at first it was really hard to deal with that. You got to be, that's heavy duty.
So you don't have a rule.
Do I have a what?
I have a rule.
What's your rule?
I will not vote for a politician that does not have a Twitter account.
Right.
Like you must have Twitter because I must be able to send you angry rants when you
Yes, that is the purpose of my Twitter account. Yes. I would say in Asheville it ebbs and flows in terms, Asheville's very cutting edge when it comes to political issues.
Right.
And so what's the issue today will be a different thing in 2 months. So I would say right now our big issue is growth, development, hotels, traffic. Those are kind of the things that I hear the loudest, or as they say on Parks and Rec, people are caring at me the loudest about. But there are a lot of other really important issues going on in our community that don't get as much noise around them that to me are just as important and need. Well, we're trying to have a conversation around the history of Asheville and the neglect that was experienced in our minority communities, our poor communities. And we're trying to be very open in talking about equity and social justice issues. And I think it's very difficult for cities to embrace these conversations because they're not a checklist.
Right.
It's not like we need to repave that street, check. This is a complicated conversation that sometimes it feels like you're making progress. Sometimes it feels like you went way backwards. So those things are rising to the surface more and more, and we're hearing more and more about it. It's not in the traditional way that constituents communicate, where they send me an email and say, why haven't you filled the pothole on this street? But the city is trying to participate in and facilitate more conversation around those issues.
I remember I was at a meeting and I cornered the mayor. So I was like, hey, let's talk about these wages because the system need to get paid. And she's like, I'm doing all I can, like on the city level, and I've raised the minimum wage at City Hall. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't work at City Hall, Mayor. Like, I need some money. And she's like, I actually don't have control over how independent businesses pay you.
Sorry, and one of the things I said is like, a lot of what Asheville does is the service industry or shops, and we are getting so much more traffic. And so I think it's also important for people who are working in smaller businesses or businesses that are now booming due to traffic to say, why when business is booming is my wage not going up a little bit?
Right. And I think that what the mayor explained to me was like, hey, I did this to model. So a part of her job as mayor is like modeling what she wants to see the city do. So I've raised the minimum wage at City Hall for my employees as a nod to smaller businesses to do the same thing. So that was like one of the first political conversations we had. You probably don't even remember.
No, but I'm familiar with the speech I gave you. I'm so glad you remember. I do get that question a lot. People believe, a lot of people move to Asheville from someplace else that has a totally different governance structure. And so they, they'll say, how come you can't raise the minimum wage? Well, in North Carolina, cities can't raise the minimum wage for private employees, employers, employees, and they should raise the minimum wage. But if you look at, and I love to study these issues, but if you look at the whole Southeast, all the southern states haven't raised the minimum wage above the federal minimum wage. And that really would move the needle for people in North Carolina more than any other bag of tricks you got on wage issues.
So what can we do? Tell us what to do so we can support you in that.
Well, the legislature is the one who can change that. But
do you want us to call his office, or do you want us to
well,
march?
we have to have a different legislature. That's what we have to have.
I mean, it's simple as that. That's it.
I think on the wage issue, just to dive deep in there for just a second, I spent a year with a group they put together 20 Democrats and 20 Republicans and shoved us all in a room at Duke University over the course of a year. I told you that story. And we studied all the data, and it was clear that of all the things you could do to make people's lives better in terms of income, you have to raise the minimum wage. And we use those little voting technique where you can't tell who's voting what way in the room, and to see if there were support for these different initiatives. There were legislators in that group. And it was really interesting because I think there was a recognition that, it would change things, but politically, in that situation, the Republicans weren't going to be willing to do it. But this last year, the legislature changed the wage for all state employees to be a living wage as a minimum wage for state employees. And I think that is a small step in recognizing that that's something that has to happen.
Yeah. I'm building this thought idea that we need to get away from living wage and go to a thriving wage, because that's really what's important, is making sure that families can actually thrive, as opposed to just live, right? Because I mean, I can pay bills all day and I'm living, but what kind of life is it?
Right. Absolutely.
Right.
And also, you mentioned the growth and people asking you all the time, what is this influx of people? How is it affecting our roads? How is it affecting our parking? Just people who live here all the time. How is it affecting people not being able to afford apartments and rent and all of that? What do you tell these citizens? What is being done, or what can be done about that? Because that's the number one complaint that I get from everybody who lives here.
Yeah, you do. So and the complaint you hear is more about, I can't find housing, or I can't.
No, I can't find it. I can't afford it.
I can find it, but I can't afford it.
And then, like with the new Flatiron building, like the city was upset. Like, what are we going to do about people who can't find housing? I worked at Green Opportunities as the training and support director, and one of the hardest things was home placement for low-income individuals.
Yeah, and I've been contacted by folks that work with immigrant communities, and they're very interested in Asheville because we have so many jobs. We have the lowest unemployment rate in the state, and have for years now. And we have so many entry-level jobs that are good for a new immigrant community, but we don't have the housing.
Right.
So we're not an appropriate community.
And one of the things, like, this is one of my actual deeper questions here. Like, I hear that Asheville has the lowest wage, but when I look at that for people of color, it is more than 6 or 7 times what we're saying as a city
The
that
employment
rate is. And so that percentage is mostly people of color and immigrants not able to find work in the city. So are there any initiatives or things that you're working on that are going to help people of color get better jobs, get more connected, and get that equity that they need?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of different things that are happening. And I think that it's still frustrating for people because it doesn't feel fast enough. It doesn't feel big enough. And I'm going to be honest with you. I think there are macroeconomic trends that are happening in our nation, and we're kind of collateral damage in some of that. And so we can only do so much, but we are trying to be as aggressive as possible. So, right now we're trying to, within the city, ramp up to be better partners with minority business owners, to be contractors with the city. And that means really helping train people to be those good contractors with the city. So we're trying to do things like that. We, of course, have economic development incentives for businesses that will pay, not hotels, they don't pay enough. It has to be businesses that will pay enough of a wage that want to grow or locate here. And so we do work with businesses like that, but that's going to be like a GE Aviation or a Linamar or one of these bigger companies. And for a while there, we're seeing a lot of that, but now it's a little bit, we're still getting some, but it's, we haven't an HVAC manufacturer that came from Canada recently. So there's jobs like that, but it's not, we need 1,000 of them, not, not 20.
And are you the person that goes out and say, hey, GE, we got some space over here for you if you like it? Do you romance those strategic partners?
Yes, I do, in partnership with, it's from the state to the county to the city. Yeah, there's a whole system in place. And I'll say this about North Carolina is pretty good about that. They've got a good program in place. The governor, from the top down oversees that. And locally, Asheville and Buncombe County work really well with the Economic Development Commission. So when those opportunities happen, we're also aggressively going out and seeking opportunities as well. But it's still, there needs to be more. There still needs to be more. But here's the irony around a lot of the growth and housing issues. On the one hand, people are very upset about growth. And they don't, they see an apartment building go up in South Asheville and they say, oh, there's going to be more cars. But then on the other hand, they'll say, but I need housing. Yeah. And it's a little bit of a challenging conversation to have in a leadership position to try to explain to people that sort of addressing this one need kind of means that this other thing is happening, this growth thing is happening, but this housing, and we're kind of, frankly, we're kind of at the younger stages of having that discussion in Asheville. There are cities that are way past us already. You take a San Francisco and they're not doing NIMBY anymore. They're doing YIMBY, which is yes in my backyard, not no in my backyard. They've already said, okay, I'm going to use public transportation, and could you please build an apartment building on this corner? So because the reality is we're urbanizing. Right. People are moving to cities because that's where the jobs are. And it's not like we can just say, we're done, we're closed. The wall is up. No one else can come here. We're not going to grow anymore. That ship has sailed. North Carolina is one of the fastest growing states in the nation, and you can see why. It's still pretty affordable compared to New York or California, and it's still growing jobs here. So we're going to have to just figure out how to continue to plan for that growth and accommodate it as best we can.
Kind of find a middle ground to accommodate both.
Right. The trick is to try to not erode what makes us special and to try to continue to be able to make a place for the people that already live here. I'll give you an example. One of the things that's a real tension point that doesn't get any conversation is the short-term rental issue in Asheville. So we're the second highest per capita of short-term rentals in the country.